Hello, I'm Dr. Manuel G. Saldivar. I'm a cognitive psychologist and a university faculty member. On this channel, I focus on ideas and concepts that will help you become more successful as a college student. Please join me for today's episode. Active listening is the key to deep learning as a college student. I've discussed in some of the previous videos in this series that because of the experiences many students bring into college out of high school, there's often an assumption that being in the presence of information, being in the same room as information being presented by a professor, for example, or being discussed by classmates, that just kind of being in the vicinity is enough for you to learn things. But that's not really the case for the various reasons that I've discussed in prior videos, and those previous videos are linked in the description box below, and I'll point you to a few specific episodes that might be of interest that are related to this topic of active listening. But the takeaway point for today's episode is that you have to make an effort, you have to be active, hence the term, in listening when someone is speaking, presenting, trying to give you information, whether that someone is a professor, a classmate who's doing a presentation, or other people you may encounter in college, like librarians, tutors, or others. You really want to be open to learn from anyone who has information or knowledge they can share with you, but you'll never be able to take up that knowledge yourself if your attitude is, I'll just come to class and sit here quietly, and as long as my eyeballs are pointed towards the speaker, that's how I pick up information. The reality is much more complicated. You have to make an effort to focus your attention on someone who's speaking in this example, in order to really pick up the information that you want to get from them. Otherwise, you're just sitting there in the room, not really being productive. The first aspect to active listening is paying attention, observing someone's body language. There has been research done that suggests that a good bit of the information that humans provide one to another actually comes from body language as much or more than comes from actual speech or vocalization. With our body language, we can communicate emotion, we can make gestures to emphasize certain points, certain words. So if you're just kind of zoning out and, again, have your eyeballs pointed roughly in the direction of the person who's speaking, but you're not really paying attention, that body language is not necessarily going to seep into your consciousness, and so you may miss some important information. So being conscious about observing body language is an important part of being an active listener. Another important part is being good at paraphrasing and or asking questions. So paraphrasing just means repeating something either to yourself or back to the person who's speaking, where you restate points that they've made, comments they've made, in order to make sure that you understand what they're saying. An example might be in a math class. You may have a teacher, maybe you had a teacher in high school in an algebra class who talked about the way in which you want to factor a quadratic equation. And so paraphrasing might be taking their statement or taking the information they've given you. You might raise your hand or otherwise talk to the teacher and say, can you confirm that the way that you factor a quadratic equation is blah, blah, blah. So you're restating, paraphrasing the information they've given you. The first part of that, the first benefit that you get is making sure that you actually captured the information, that you got all the bits of data, all the points that they were raised, but also by paraphrasing, by taking their statement and not just parroting it back verbatim, but changing it around, putting it in your own words, then you ensure that you really are beginning to understand the information. If you can put something in your own words, that doesn't mean you have a perfect understanding. It also doesn't mean that you'll remember it forever, but it's at least the beginning of a hint or clue that you are starting to be able to grasp that information well enough to take it apart and put it back together in a way that might make more sense for you. Asking questions, of course, will result in ultimately the same kind of outcome, giving you an opportunity to double check to make sure that you're following whatever the information is that's being presented. A third point that's important for active listening is reflecting on the meaning of information that's being presented to you. In previous videos, in my teaching, I referred to this as a so what. Okay, so we've discussed in this economics class the impact of the Federal Reserve Bank on interest rates. So what? How does that information apply to the bigger picture of this economics class? That's one example. Another example, okay, in this history class, we've talked about the role of abolitionists in the U.S. Civil War. Okay, so what? How does that point tie into the bigger picture? How are all these different ideas that I'm being presented with in this history class, how are they all tied together? And perhaps most importantly, how do these ideas relate to me in my life or my future? Sorry for the interruption, but if you're enjoying this video, please like, subscribe, and click on the bell icon for notifications. Exactly what the meaning of a particular idea or set of ideas is always going to be a very personal thing, so it's going to look different from one person to another. But by attaching meaning, so think back to one of our earlier episodes, when you attach meaning, when you have a so what, you can apply to information that helps you encode that information and move it from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. Showing empathy is another important aspect of active listening. Empathy just means the ability to understand someone else's emotional state, to understand why someone is feeling a particular way. You may not be feeling that same emotion, but if you can understand why someone is upset, happy, sad, or in the case of a classroom or learning situation, if you can understand why a speaker finds a particular idea very exciting or very disturbing, why an idea is challenging, if you can understand why they're feeling a particular emotion, if you can be empathetic, then that can contribute to your own understanding of what's going on. So again, you're not just memorizing ideas or expecting ideas to soak into your brain, you're actually actively trying to make those ideas make sense for you. And then finally, the fifth piece of being a good active listener is knowing when and how to take action. If you're learning ideas that are part of some complex model or process, which typically is what will be happening as a college student, you need to think about what next steps you have to take in order to understand that idea, in order to develop a true, deeper meaning. For example, if you're taking a math class and you're learning ideas about college algebra, how are those ideas related to one another? How can you apply them to real-world problems? How can your own career path or your own personal journey in life benefit from that information? What can you do with that information, with that knowledge? How can you take action? If you can answer these kinds of questions, then that will not only help you understand the information, learn it, be able to remember it, but also it's a signal that you are understanding the so what of the information, because you're developing a way of understanding how to put that information into practice, how to find a useful purpose for that information. There is a set of 4 related episodes in this video series that all are meant to be viewed as a group so you can get the best idea. Episode 10 looks at ideas related to learning inside of class. Episode 11 looks at learning outside of class. This is episode 12 on active listening, and then next episode, episode 13, looks at active reading. If you watch these 4 videos together, and the order doesn't really matter, although I probably suggest you would watch them in the order that's listed on the screen from 10 to 13. These 4 videos together should give you a good takeaway on what it means to be able to become an independent learner and be able to think deeply and develop true understanding about ideas, but also offering you some concrete steps to achieve that. To review our discussion in this episode on active listening, we talked about the importance of observing body language. A lot of information that is conveyed in classroom situations, in discussions, comes from body language. Paraphrasing and questioning are ways that you can signal that you are not just engaging with ideas, but also beginning to develop an understanding of them, where you can take a speaker's words or take concepts and break them apart and put them back together in your own words. That's paraphrasing. If you can ask questions about ideas that you're being exposed to, then those will not just help you learn, but also signal that you are being active and you're listening. If you learn to reflect on the meaning, the so what of ideas, how they apply to other ideas you've learned, how they apply to your life, to your profession, if you can show empathy with ideas, if you understand why they may evoke a certain emotional reaction in the speaker, the presenter, or how they evoke emotional reactions in you, those are important signs of active listening. And then finally, if you can determine how to take action based on the things you're learning, then that also signals that you're doing a good job of being an active listener. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll click on the thumbs up icon below. And if you really enjoyed it, please subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications by clicking on the bell icon. YouTube will notify you of future videos added to this channel. Remember, college success is challenging. It takes work and effort, but it is certainly within your grasp. Good luck.